Well, hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Thank you for watching. Tonight, disturbing attacks on Christians at home and abroad. We begin in Syria, where a genocide against Christians is underway. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Christians have been slaughtered by Muslims. Now, the exact number may never be known. Women and children, priests slaughtered in their homes just because they're followers of Christ. Now, under the rule of Bashar al-Assad, Christians were actually protected. They were allowed to worship and practice their faith. But in December, Assad was ousted by Islamic militants, due in large part to a destabilization effort originally started by former President Barack Obama and the CIA. And today, well, it's open season on Christians in Syria. More Christians have been martyred in Syria than those killed in the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel. Understand that, folks. This is serious. Muslims in the Middle East are literally hunting Christians and Jews. Now, it's a story that should be leading every news broadcast in this nation, but it is not. There were so many in this country and within the previous administration who celebrated the ouster of Assad. But as far back as 2015, then candidate Donald Trump warned Americans what could happen if Assad was removed from power.
The problem is the other side of Assad. We have no idea who they are. They probably are racist. I'm saying, are we better off with Assad? We have no idea who these people are. We give them weapons, we give them ammunition, we give them everything. Aaron, we have no idea who. I mean, maybe it's worse than Assad. So what are we doing? Why are we involved? We have to get rid of ISIS, very importantly. But I look at Assad, and Assad, to me, looks better than the other side.
Now, Tulsi Gabbard, the now director of national intelligence, warned lawmakers, rather, during her confirmation hearing that very bad things would happen if the Syrian Christians were not protected.
I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad regime, but today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It
is
be.
certainly
and
not in our interests.
No, and well, in response to her testimony, Congressman Mark Kelly, the Democrat from Arizona, accused her of spreading Russian and Iranian propaganda. Assad was the only thing stopping the Muslims from slaughtering the Christians. And it turns out Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump were right all along. Meanwhile, in this country, Senator Bernie Sanders is under fire for platforming a Christ hater. It happened over the weekend at his rally in Wisconsin. Now, Senator Sanders invited transgender singer Laura Jane Grace to perform at a Wisconsin rally on Friday. Mr. Grace sang one of the most profane and disgraceful songs about Christianity and Almighty God I've ever heard. It was pure evil, folks. Now, the songs went on to mock Jesus and Easter Sunday. He said over and over again, does your God have a big fat blank? Not going to say that word. Senator Sanders actually went out of his way to thank the transgender singer. The Christ-hating Democrats never mock the Muslim faith, do they? No, it's always the Christians, always the Christians, always the Christians that trigger this nasty bunch of heathens. Now, Sanders, you might remember, once said that born-again evangelicals like Russell Vogt should not be allowed to serve in the federal government. Understand this, ladies and gentlemen, one day those Christ-hating Democrats like Bernie and his transgender pal, they will stand before that great judgment throne to answer for this filth. And might I be so bold as to say, God will not be mocked. Well, in other news, at the White House today, President Trump dropping the hammer on Columbia University, announcing his rescinding more than $400 million in federal grants. The reason why, very simple. Columbia refused to crack down on anti-Semitism. Now, earlier this week, HHS, the Education Department, and General Services Administration announced a comprehensive review of more than $5 billion in federal grant money that was destined for Columbia's bank accounts. Education Secretary Linda McMahon addressed the issue in a statement earlier this week. Americans have watched in horror for more than a year now as Jewish students have been assaulted and harassed on elite university campuses, repeatedly overrun by anti-Semitic students and agitators. Unlawful encampments and demonstrations have completely paralyzed day-to-day campus operations, depriving Jewish students of learning opportunities to which they are entitled. Now, the president has been very clear. We will not harbor Jew haters on our university campuses. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced yesterday they would begin deporting any foreign nationals who've taken part in pro-Hamas protest. At least one person already taken into custody. Now, Donald Trump wants to do something big with the Department of Education, but the new secretary there, Linda McMahon, says whether it's dismantling the whole thing or taking a scalpel remains to be seen. Joining me now, Glenn Jacobs, the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, in the eastern part of the state. Mr. Mayor, good to have you with us tonight.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate you having me on.
So you reposted an item about the Department of Education showing how the budget has just exploded over the last couple of years. Only 10% actually goes to help the classrooms. What are they doing with the rest of that money?
Well, it's a black hole in Washington, D.C., like so many other things are. It's a ginormous bureaucracy. And this is what we see, especially with the federal government, is that money goes into that bureaucracy. They keep the vast majority of it, and it doesn't go back out for the services that the organization or the agency is supposed to be providing. It's not just the Department of Education. It's many other departments within the federal government as well.
I mean, we understand this. I know there are going to be a lot of people that are saying, okay, well, we've got to just shut it down right now, but we can't do that because that does require work from Congress. So what do you expect to see happen here, and how will the department be whittled down?
Well, first of all, let's go back to and look at Columbia University, which you were talking about at the top of the show. No one's just shedding any tears for Columbia University. They have a $14.8 billion endowment. Yet their undergraduate tuition is $68,000 a year. When you throw in housing and other fees, it goes up to $93,000 a year. Meanwhile, in 2021, the former president of Columbia University made $3.9 million. The current president's base salary is over $1 million a year. So one thing I think they've been done is I don't think that federal money should be going to any of these schools. Granted, I don't know what the grants are for, maybe some research things that are going on, but nevertheless, they are doing quite well. This is a nonprofit organization which is making a lot of money. And Columbia University was also, it was the breeding grounds for cultural Marxism in the United States when the school of Frankfurt School in Germany was formed, which is where all these cultural Marxist ideas come from. Their base operations in the U.S. was Columbia. But I think that one thing certainly could look at is higher education and determining, do we really want federal money going to these things? And then obviously you go from there. But again, when folks hear, oh my gosh, all these things are going to be cut, well, it doesn't mean that the money going to schools is going to be cut. What it means is that the power and the authority will return to the states, and hopefully our money will quit feeding this bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. and actually go to help educate kids.
To that point, we know that at least one pro-Hamas student agitator has been taken into custody and will be deported. We're also getting word late this afternoon that Senate Democrats are enraged over the guy that was busted. And President Trump, in response, said, you better get ready because there are more arrests coming. Is that the right call here to send these foreign nationals back home if they're burning our flag on American soil?
Well, ultimately, when you look at the Democrats, they're just so completely out of touch with everything at this point. If Donald Trump said the sky were blue, they would probably censor him, try to impeach him, and say that the sky was a different color. So obviously there's an issue at some of these college campuses, and I think that President Trump, I trust that he will do the right thing. And unfortunately, these elite liberal universities have just become bastions of hatred of America. Obviously we have to respect people's right free speech and a protest at the same time when, as Mrs. McMahon said in that clip, when they impair the ability of other students to get what they paid for, right, which is an education, that becomes very problematic. And also when their goal is literally to undermine everything, I don't quite understand now what the mission of these universities is. It should be to contribute to society, to produce lawyers and doctors and scientists and those sort of things. Instead, they've gone the other way, and it's just all about politics and wokeism and pushing a cultural Marxist agenda.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, Mayor, we're going to have to leave it there. Always good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Well, Democrats are pitching a fit over the firing of federal workers. Nobody likes to be let go, but layoffs, they happen all the time in the real world. What about the rest of us who are always at risk of corporate downsizing? Yikes, not at Newsmax. My next guest, a Virginian, posted on X to her senator, "Hey, Mark Warner, I remember when an excellent copy editor at the Virginian Pilot got laid off. She had just been diagnosed with cancer. She begged for her job so she could keep her health coverage. No dice. Don't remember you expressing any concern when my industry laid off hundreds of Virginia workers. Don't worry about her. She's dead now." Wow. Well, joining me now is Carrie Doherty, the co-host of the Carrie and Mike Show on AM 850 WTAR, great radio station. Good to have you with us. Wow, you just got right to the point there. Did you ever hear anything back from the senator?
Oh, no, you never hear anything back from Mark Warner. He just goes, he makes these crazy videos and tweets or X's now every day, and he doesn't ever respond to voters. But it was worth throwing it out there, I think.
Carrie, it is fascinating, though, right? I mean, you have all these federal workers. Some of them have been working for 25, 30 years, and many of them don't know what they do. Just the other day, hundreds of Odyssey radio workers laid off. Nobody said anything about that in the national media.
Well, that's the thing. I looked it up, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics claims that 40% of all American workers have been laid off at one point in their life. And I was in the newspaper industry, obviously saw round after round of layoffs after 2007. You know, and it's a fact of life, and it's always sad. You know, people raid their retirement funds, their lives are turned upside down, their families are disturbed. But they're acting like this is the end of the world because federal workers are suddenly experiencing what private sector workers have experienced always. I don't understand the consternation over this.
I always love having radio folks on. We're part of the family here. But one of the reasons why is you guys had the opportunity that a lot of folks in TV and other genres don't have is you get to hear directly from your listeners. And I'm curious, what are they saying about this?
Well, we're hearing the same thing because even though we have a lot of federal workers, and Virginia has, I think, 144,000, we're I think we have the third most federal workers in the United States. People understand that this is just one of the cycles of working life, and you just got to suck it up. I think what we're seeing from Tim Kaine and Mark Warner, however, is this is their base. Their voter base is Northern Virginia. The federal workers vote in a block Democratic every time. And if they suddenly have to move back to Iowa or something, they're going to be in trouble.
You know, it's fascinating when you looked at the Zillow reports, the real estate up for sale there in the D.C. area. I mean, the average home was $3 or $4 million. I mean, how much are we paying these folks?
A lot. And you know, when there was a time when the idea was if you're a federal worker, you make a little less than the private sector, but you do enjoy some job security. Now they're among the top paid workers in America. And private sector employees are looking at them going, what's so special about you? Why are you immune to layoffs and reduced hours like we all experienced? We used to get furlough days in the newspaper. Those were fun. Work without pay.
Well, not only that, Carrie, but geez, Lou, people getting to stay home, work in their pajamas for a couple of years now. You and I, we have to put on pants and go to work in the morning.
Exactly. And you don't know how many federal workers have taken second jobs. They're out in the gig economy or working as consultants part-time. I mean, people need to go to work. I don't have a lot of sympathy, and I'm sure you don't either, Todd, for people who stay home all day. Always had to go to work.
Exactly. All right. Well, Carrie, a great radio station you guys have there, and appreciate you coming on Newsmax tonight.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks so much. It was an honor. Thank you.
All right. Well, now over to our Newsmax congressional correspondent. She's employed, Kilmeny Dukart, live from Capitol Hill with the latest. Kilmeny.
A shutdown showdown is brewing between Democrats and Republicans, and the question is who will blink first. The business, of course, begins at the House, where House Speaker Mike Johnson has just released a 7-month short-term spending bill that will fund the government at 2024 levels. While there may be a few Democrats to cross party lines, Republicans will likely have to get to 217 on their own.
I think we will have the votes. And let me be clear, this is a continuing resolution, which means that we're basically extending the funding that everyone voted for back in December. So there's no reason why the Democrats should not join us and make this bipartisan.
But they are. Democratic leadership blasted out this one-pager over the weekend, calling the bill a, quote, blank check for Elon Musk and President Trump to continue their campaign of destruction, concluding with this very blunt last line: Democrats are urged to vote no on the CR. But the real issue is in the Senate, where the GOP will need at least 7 Democratic senators to vote in favor of it. Here's what we heard from Democratic Senator Andy Kim over the weekend.
What I want to see get done is a 30-day extension for us to be able to continue these bipartisan talks, and then to actually be able to come up with a congressional deal rather than just kick the can down the road with a CR for the rest of the year, which is what Speaker Johnson wants, because, again, he's abdicating his responsibility. He's really showing just how bad he is at governing right now.
Senate Democrats also believe the bill gives the executive branch too much power over federal spending, and they've criticized a cut in non-defense related programs. That fight is likely to play out into the public view all week. Back to you.
All right, Kilmeny, thank you. Well, a suicidal man shot outside the White House. Plus, the president says no pain, no gain as he navigates the country out of economic peril. More news after this.